Examine a text composed near the end of the 8th century BC, and you might expect a straightforward, linear tale. But as the second surviving work of Western literature, the Odyssey reveals a highly sophisticated narrative architecture. To build that architecture, the story first creates a massive vacuum. King Odysseus has been gone for 20 years, 10 fighting the Trojan War, and another 10 lost at sea. To the people of his island kingdom of Ithaca, he is presumed dead. That absence leaves his estate vulnerable. A mob of 108 unruly suitors has besieged his home, consuming his wealth, and aggressively pressuring his wife, Penelope, to marry one of them. Instead of walking step by step from Troy to this hostage situation, the poem snaps the timeline in half, dropping us into the chaos, called in medias res. To bridge the gap, the story shatters its chronology, reaching backward to fill the blanks. Dropping the listener into the middle of a high-stakes crisis demonstrates that the Odyssey is an engineered thriller, built to hook an audience with immediate mystery. While the present-day plot follows Odysseus's 20-year-old son, Telemachus, as he leaves Ithaca, guided by a disguised goddess, to search for his father, the narrative suddenly shifts focus. We finally find the missing king, trapped on a remote island for 7 years by the nymph Calypso. After Hermes secures his release, a vengeful sea god destroys his raft, leaving an exhausted, naked Odysseus to wash ashore in the land of the shipbuilding Phaeacians. His rescuers naturally demand to know who he is. Here, the poem deploys a nested narrative. Odysseus himself takes over as the narrator, flashing back to recount his own journey. Handing the microphone to the protagonist allows the epic to take a decade of disjointed monster encounters and compress them into a single, tightly controlled storytelling sequence. Looking at ancient depictions like this vase, we see the threats he faced, losing men to the lethargic lotus eaters, outsmarting the witch goddess Circe, and surviving the lethal song of the Sirens by tying himself to a ship's mast. But his encounter with the Cyclops Polyphemus reveals his defining heroic trait. Facing a man-eating giant, Odysseus relies on Metis, his cunning intelligence, by blinding the creature and claiming his name is No Man. Yet that sharp intellect is matched by his dangerous pride. As he sails away, his arrogance takes over. He shouts his real name at the blinded giant, earning himself a devastating 10-year curse from the sea god Poseidon. For centuries, these stories survived purely through oral tradition. It wasn't until later that Alexandrian scholars organized the massive, sprawling text into the 24 distinct books seen on ancient papyrus fragments like this. This diagram shows the planetary alignment described in the text. By cross-referencing specific mentions of Venus, a new moon, and a sudden midday darkness, researchers dated the king's return exactly to a total solar eclipse on April 16, 1178 BC. Pinpointing real astronomical phenomena within the text suggests these fantastical wanderings may be encoded oral records of actual geographic and historical events. After Odysseus finishes his story, the Phaeacians ferry him home, snapping the narrative structure back to the present day, just as his son Telemachus arrives on the same shore. The timelines collide. Knowing his house is occupied by over 100 hostile men, Odysseus relies on his cunning one last time, infiltrating his own estate disguised as a filthy wandering beggar. The climax hinges on a trap set by Penelope. She challenges the suitors to an impossible archery contest, knowing that only the disguised king possesses the sheer physical strength to string his heavy bow. He strings the heavy weapon and turns it on the intruders, executing all 108 suitors with deadly precision. Taking back his kingdom required a synthesis of raw physical dominance and patient strategic deception. The emotional resolution arrives only when Penelope forces one final test. She accepts his true identity only after he proves he knows their marriage bed was carved from a living olive tree, still rooted to the ground. The story doesn't end there. A bizarre ancient sequel known as the Telegony details how Odysseus is later killed by his own illegitimate son with the witch Circe, using a spear tipped with a poisonous stingray spine. The survival of this strange continuation suggests that ancient Greek audiences had a deep appetite for expanded narrative universes and ongoing lore. Beyond its name surviving as a shorthand for travel, the poem's structural design established a more enduring legacy. By shattering a straight timeline into nested perspectives and flashbacks, Homer provided a framework for multi-layered storytelling that remains in use nearly 3,000 years later.